Hi everybody, it's Ade here from Skidmore Second-Hand Tyres. Whenever you catch me here up in the Dream Factory, I always seem to be having a cup of coffee and a fag. It's time for the big reveal. In the last video, or video before last, I was talking about a new project that I was going to embark on this year. That's why I did the work in the garage to get that all repaired and watertight. And so today I'm going to be telling you what the project is. And the project is to build a boat. I'm going back a few years now. I made a bookcase which I drew up on a bit of graph paper, shaped like a boat. And it's 7 foot long by 3 feet wide or so, and I'll show you a picture of that now, some bit of film of that now in the house. Here's the boat bookcase. I had to screw some formers to the floor in here because we've got wooden floorboards to mould the sides with. I used 2 layers of 6mm wood pine for the sides, and then screwed them and glued them together around and clamped them around this former to get the bend. So I had to get it up and get it all together in a few days because it was coming up for Christmas, and so by the time we put everything back in it, I never got time to finish it off. I was going to decorate it with some bits and pieces, some ropes and some cleats and things, but by the time we got all these books in there and moved it into the corner, it was seemed like a bit too much of a job, but it works well as a bookcase. The idea is not new at all, and everyone was quite impressed by how boat-like it was, and they said it could float, and it sort of stuck in my mind a little bit, but it was very small, too narrow really. So a while ago I found a video on YouTube about a boat that was made by a stitch and glue method using sheets of plywood, and you start off with 2 flat sheets of plywood and you cut it in a certain way, and then you stitch it all together, and with drill holes through and put copper wire through and twist it all together, and then you fill between the copper wires with epoxy resin like they use for fiberglass in, and that holds it all together. You take the stitches out and then you put more fiberglass sheet in and glue it all together, and then you cover it with fiberglass all on the outside and paint the inside with more epoxy, and you fit a seat in it and you've got yourself a boat. So I was quite intrigued by that, and I started looking at how it was made, and I didn't want to pay the 30 quid for the plans because I thought it must be easy enough to do. So I started making models out of bits of card and sticking them together, and then from that I worked out how to get all these curves, and when it's all together, this bottom bit, if it's right, then this will sit dead flat on the floor. So then to make the sides, you just cut a bit with a bit of a taper from front to back and stitch it on, and then you can blend in and work out the curve so it makes a nice graceful curve around the prow. And then that's it. But at the same time I started seeing this guy called Roger Barnes, who has I think it's a reasonable sized dinghy but not very big. He tows it on the back of his car and he goes sail camping in that, and I thought it'd be nice to camp in a boat, but this again is only 7 foot long and about 4 foot wide, so it's not big enough, it's tiny really. It's right for messing around on the river, but not for going out on a camping trip. So I started looking more and more on YouTube. You ever get the feeling you've seen every film on YouTube? Because I certainly feel like I have. This is the template for the bottom, and on the bottom sections, and then you see me just doing a little bit of work on one of the videos I made, because I left a couple of free hints in videos that if anyone saw in the background or whatever, that they'd pick up on, just for a bit of fun. But yeah, I thought I need a bigger boat, just like in Jaws. So I started looking at more and more videos and found hunting through for all the videos I could find on boat building. And there's a guy down in Devon, or Cornwall I think it may be, the channel site is Traditional Boat Building, and they filmed this guy called Marcus making a clinker built sailing dinghy from scratch, even taking the measurements off of an existing boat that he found in a shed somewhere, and it showed him taking the measurements, the way he did it, spiraling them off, and then making the drawings on the floor for full size, lofting that's called, and then making the moulds that you used to shape the boat around. And it's a fascinating series and really full of information, unlike some of the stuff. I originally thought about making a canoe or something, or getting a canoe, but Cuckoo's got one, and we went out at it, and it's absolutely fantastic going up the river on it, but they're not big enough and they're quite unstable, as I found out when I fell in one day. But the idea had stuck in my head, and I started to look at all the stuff I could find on making boats, and some of it was very detailed, and a lot of it they sort of kept a lot of things secret, or the video was too short, or you never saw it to completion, and things like that. And sometimes it was frustrating because there was just that little bit of information missing that you needed to carry on with your idea. But I persevered and picked up clues from all over the place. That's why I haven't been watching so many bushcrafting videos, because I've just been obsessively watching boat building stuff and working out what to do. And I had to also, sort of in my own mind, had to work out how the designs are arrived at, because if I understood that, I felt I'd understand a little bit more about what I was doing when I was building one. So I just looked and looked and looked, and I found an American Institute of Technology video or two, and they were making half hull models, which are the spoon, which are these. I started off with a block of wood. This is made out of three bits of wood, I think it was, glued together, and then I sort of roughed out the shape I wanted using measurements and a bit of sketching, and then you carve it with chisels and files until you get the shape that you want. And then I had to find out how to take all of these measurements off the length of the boat and the profile of it, so that I could scale it up to a full-size drawing. Each of the every foot on this, I've done it, I do things sort of like half-cocked. I'll do inches for some things, an inch to a foot, or inch to 30 centimetres, and then so you've got 12 points to measure from. That gives you 12 stations, as they're called. And I had to work out how can I get a 3D version of that line at that point. And again, in that American video, there was a tiny clue. They had a board set up with a piece of paper on it, and they laid the boat half-hull model in there, and they sort of must have used a stick of wood and taken a point and mapped it onto the paper. And watching Marcus do it in the boat shed, he used sheets of plywood cut into a sort of like roughly a quarter shape, and then he stuck sticks of wood. It was all clamped up on the centre line and right angles to the centre line, and he stuck bits of wood on at the top points of all the planks. So I thought, aha, we can do something in between. So, which number is this? Station 1. That's up there. So I came up with this. Clamp these onto the mould, the model, and then stuck bits of veneer, and that gave me these things. And from that I was able to draw those out onto a piece of paper. I then scaled them up slightly so that I was able to take the measurements in millimetres to then work up a full-size drawing of that section of the hull. And I did that for all 12 stations, and I've got 12 drawings which I'll maybe show you in a minute. I don't know if they'll come out really, but I then marked these coordinates. It's basically just like drawing a graph, and then using some thin wood, I stuck pins in through the drawing at the points where I put the coordinates, and then using a piece of wood like this I was able to get a nice round line, you know, smooth curve, which on a couple of them there was a couple of errors. The pins didn't quite touch, but it was only by a couple of 3mm at the very most, which shows actually just how accurate you can be with something like this, which is quite amazing really, because that's gone from something which is 2 inches across to something which is actually 2 foot and more across. So I was quite pleased with the margin of error that went into it. And at the same time as well, I found out about a company somewhere in England that sold plans off a CD-ROM, which had all of the sort of all the coordinates you need for making the planks, the shape, because they're shaped to cut out like a barrel is shaped, and the station moulds that you need, and a step-by-step sort of instructions and photographic record that someone had made with someone who'd made one before. And I thought, this 10-foot boat, that's reasonable size, certainly I could lay out in that, and it's already a tried and tested model. So I bought one of those CDs, about 15 quid, and it's very informative, and all of the stuff's on there, but you're sworn to secrecy about sizes and dimensions and whatnot, and repeating or showing anyone the actual measurements, because it's you know, it's someone else's work, so you can't really show any of that. And that's all made of 6mm ply as well, same as the boat model I've got here, but the planks are sort of overlap slightly, and then the gap, the V-shaped gap, is filled with thickened epoxy, and that glues it and makes it watertight, and then you paint it all with epoxy to protect it from water, and then varnish, paint and varnish. And I think that's the plan now, is to start to build one of these 10-foot boats. They're 10 foot by 4 foot, and they've got 2 seats in, room for camping gear, and I'm gonna hopefully get that done in not too distant future, and be out camping on the river. One thing I did find with going out with Cuckoo in his canoe is that the River Stour, which runs from goodness knows where in Kent out to the estuary at Sandwich sort of area, Pegwell Bay, the banks are quite steep, and there's not many places where you can necessarily get out. Certainly in the middle of nowhere it's very difficult to get in and out because of the way the banks are. So I was thinking about tying up and actually camping on the boat, which sounds interesting. It'd be like being in a hammock really, because being in a hammock to me feels like being gently rocked in a boat. So it might be just a never touch the ground sort of camp sort of setup. But that's the intention now, is to build a boat and go out. Just a rowing boat. I don't want to have a motor on it because they make a noise, frighten all the birds away, because there's nothing quite like gliding down the river, not making hardly any noise, because you get all the wildlife and you don't frighten the fish, and you can see anything, you know, and everything. So I'm quite excited about this. The idea really came to me from watching all the videos of people out camping, like Maverick Outdoors and Marcus OCD 86. I can never remember the full title of his channel, and Woll's Wild Camping, and people like that. They're all sort of like the inspiration as well. And I grew up along by the Stour, and never ever, only once when I was a kid, went in someone else's boat for a trip up the river, but it was a bit like going into the heart of darkness, that was, because they ran out of petrol halfway along, and they had to row the rest of the way. It was a bloody nightmare with these big horseflies flying around biting you on the legs. But it's always been something that's sort of been in me, to like in rivers and that. I don't want to go in the sea, not yet anyway. I need a bigger boat. But it's something that I loved, the little trips that have been on with Cuckoo last year in the summer and autumn, and so it took a little bit longer to get going than I originally intended, but that was due to the garage being so in need of work, and also it's a challenge because both my old man and my brother had a boat each, and the only time they ever got near water was when it rained. So I've got to be the first one in my family to actually get a boat in the water. That's the challenge I've set myself. I hope the people that were interested and excited and looking forward to the reveal will be not disappointed by this, but I think it will make an interesting series as well, because I don't know, maybe it will, maybe it won't, but certainly I was fascinated by watching all the stuff I've watched, and I mean, like I say, it's frustrating sometimes, but it's just, I don't know, I just love things that are being made. I love watching things being made, and I like making things, so it seems ideal to me. So hopefully, at the very least, you'll, you know, pay a bit of attention to what's coming up in the future. So I'll see you all later. Cheerio.